Hi everybody, Angie Hotz here. I am doing my video for the oral exam practice, which surprisingly this makes me more nervous than any of the other stuff, which I don't know, it's silly because I live in such a great state. I live in Washington State, and it's such a great place to be a student midwife and to be a midwife. It's what I wrote my theoretical essay on for this class, but I don't know, these videos make me nervous, which is silly because I'm a childbirth educator and I teach people and I'm in front of people talking all the time. These videos are, oh my goodness. Okay, so I live in Washington State. We have several organizations here that have impacted midwifery throughout the entire country. We have MAWS. MAWS is Midwives Association of Washington State. It was founded in 1983. It's the largest, most established professional organization for midwives in the state. They hold many classes and continuing education opportunities for students and midwives both that are licensed. They also have every year, which is really fantastic, a lobby day where they gather midwives, MCU students, PET process students, students from Bastyr, which is Bastyr is a college here in Washington. It's in Seattle. They have programs for acupuncturists, naturopaths, and then they have a Master's of Midwifery program, among many other things. But those are some of the big ones that it's known for. So MAWS holds a lobby day every year, and we go and talk to legislators about midwifery and things that we love and things that we would like to be changed and issues that MAWS puts together and helps us to approach politicians in order to be effective and confident, that type of thing. So they organize that every year. They also were one of the original most impactful people in the process of the Smooth Transitions, which is a public health program that provides structure and framework for the transition from a home or birth center birth transfer to the hospital. So it's a program to get both the hospital and the transferring entity, whether it's midwives from a home birth or from a birth center birth, how they can better communicate with each other and what rules do they both agree upon in order to make that better for the client as well as for the professional people involved. So MAWS originally kind of spearheaded that, and now it has become more of its own entity, and it's part of the obstetrics clinical outcomes assessment program. That's where it's being held now, but it was originally housed with MAWS. MAWS also has downloadable clinical guidelines. So for those of us who've taken the midterm class, our charts, our paper charting was done through MAWS. Like that's who came up with them. So MAWS is not the only entity in Washington that does the paper charts and has those available for midwives. There's also another group called WARM. It's the Washington Alliance for Responsible Midwifery. They also have paper charts that we can purchase and use. They're lovely. They're very great. The best thing that I have participated with WARM has been a breech workshop. They brought in Rixa Fries, and she talked about the statistics worldwide in the safety of vaginal breech delivery. And then we also had some practice and skills time too with local midwives who catch breech babies and who are very skilled in the practice. So we had time with them. And this was all organized by WARM. And we were able to go and do this 2-day workshop that very well may be the best workshop that I've been to. And I've been to a lot of workshops in many different areas. And different scopes of learning. But that one was, it was so well-rounded and balanced as far as like evidence-based information and hands-on practice. It was really great. And it was well attended too. There were quite a few midwives there from all over the state. And I'm sure, I didn't meet everyone, but there were some people who traveled from out of town to come too. There are a couple of ways to get a midwifery education here in Washington State. Like I mentioned earlier, there was Bastyr University, which is in Seattle. And then, of course, MCU. And both of those require us in Washington to have additional births and as well as take additional classes through MCU in order to be licensed in our state. I want to say it's 50 additional births that we have to be in present at, not necessarily as a midwife or as a student midwife, but we have to be at least have those observed births, which I think is great. I think that having those additional births only increases our skill as midwives and student midwives. Let's see. So I plan to practice in my hometown of Bremerton. Bremerton is smaller. We're a military town, which is interesting because it's a very tight-knit community. But on the other hand, people come and go frequently. You know, people might be around for a couple of years until they're stationed somewhere else. There's a large Navy and Marine presence in the area because we have the local shipyard. And so we have aircraft carriers and we have submarines, and the crew and their family live here in my town. Or in this kind of area. It's kind of spread out. It's interesting. We're right across the water from Seattle, so we are influenced by Seattle and by that bigger metropolitan area, but it is a more rural area and a smaller area. Where I'm at in Bremerton, there are no midwives practicing. There are midwives that serve this area. You can absolutely find a midwife. There are tons of midwives in the area, actually. But there are no midwives who are practicing directly in Bremerton. And I love Bremerton. I am 2 minutes from the ferry terminal that would take me either to Seattle or to Port Orchard. We have the home health nurses, the WIC offices. We have transportation is really good here comparatively compared to the other areas in Kitsap. So I really want to practice in my hometown. I see a need for, like, I would love to have a birth center here, and I would love to have a birth center right downtown. There are a couple neighborhoods that would actually be perfect for it. And it would serve people in this particular geographic location that are not being served right now. Like if transportation is an issue, or like there aren't any midwives directly in the area who are doing clinic hours outside of regular business hours, which can be unattainable for some people. So the way that I plan to practice is absolutely supported, and it's doable. It's not unrealistic expectations for this area. And the organizations that are busy and doing hard work all the time, growing and expanding and changing our legislation in the state, not only in the state, but across the nation. Like we are, in a lot of ways, an example or a representation of the way other states could potentially adopt midwifery practice as far as like legality and what we're allowed to do. We don't have to have any kind of obstetrician oversight. We are allowed to have several medications, oxygen, IV, antibiotics, hemorrhage medications. Like we're very fortunate in the things that we're able to do. And with the Smooth Transitions program, transferring, it's not always welcome. Like it's not perfect. There's a lot of work to be done. But because that has happened here and we have just such a positive birth culture, things that I want to do would be attainable here because of the work that others are doing currently. And as far as like history goes, we're well set up here in Washington. So as far as history goes in the area, the history is fantastic and it is continuing. It just keeps getting better. And I think that it's such a great example of the way things could be done in other parts of the country, in other states. It's interesting to have conversations with other students and to hear stories about experiences that people have in other parts of the country. And it's just baffling how we are learning and training how to be safe keepers and keeping people healthy and safe as they birth their babies. And yet some people don't have access to life-saving tools, and that's ridiculous. Like, and I'm sure that, and I know that the people in those states who don't have access to it think it's ridiculous as well. And you do what you have to do, and you improvise, and you do what you have to do. So I'm very fortunate, again, to be in Washington as I go down this path. And for those main governing bodies, MAWS, WARM, smooth transitions, even just our local government, our local, WIC offices, and our, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the health department. There are people in the health department who they just love home birth and midwives and doulas, and invite us to all of the local community meetings that have to do with public health. We're always invited and welcome to come to that. So a birth center, and especially home birth practicing midwives, are absolutely welcome in our area. So I'm really excited for it. And again, just so fortunate to live in Washington State. Okay, take care, you guys.